Have a seat on your porcelain throne. It's time to talk some shit on the Powell movement.
Welcome to the Powell movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and I want to thank all of you who bought a t-shirt so far. I'm almost through all of the large tees, so snatch one up now while you still can. When I made this t-shirt, I was like, yeah, I'm going to create some cool merch. I'm going to sell it and make some money because I want the listeners to have some rad shit and I love money. But the funny thing is, I'm selling a limited amount of shirts. And when I penciled this one out, I'm not going to make much. I mean, the shirts are $10 a piece. The art costs money. The printing costs money. The shipping costs money. The bags I ship them in cost money. At the end of the day, I'm going to end up making about $4 a t-shirt. And after the time it takes to ship them, is it even worth it? Well, my answer is yes and no. And while I won't get into that answer, what I do understand is why some brands go to Asia to cut costs and make some longer margins. But from personal experience, I've seen the difference in quality from goods that come out of Asia, and that's why I made my shit right here in the good old US of A. And while I won't make much off of this shirt, I'm happy to know that I spared no expense to give you the best, because you deserve it. So that was my friendly reminder on how to support the show, because you can do that by buying a t-shirt on my website. I could have made life easier on myself and just asked for $4 from all of you, but I decided not to do that. If I ever do need to beg for money, I'll start a Patreon, but the time for that is not now. The time for now is talking about the show this week, and I'm recording this episode in installments from my hotel room in Denver. I'm here attending the Outside Festival, and while I would tell you what this event is supposed to be, I really don't know what the goal for this one is, but I'm going to talk to all the players in Denver this weekend, and I'm going to find out and let you know. There are a ton of athletes and a ton of industry folks in town, and you know I'm going to be catching up with all of them and asking them whatever comes to my head at the moment. If I like the way this episode turns out, I'm going to start doing more from events. Because really, there is no timely event coverage that happens in my world. And ski, snowboard, skate, bike, nothing comes out the following Monday, it seems like. So I'm going to deliver that, and my goal is to have the episode out Monday. So I'm recording this on a Friday. I'll record some on Saturday, on Sunday. You're going to get an unbiased view of what happened, a sneak peek behind the curtain, and chats with a lot of the athletes and important players involved. To tell you the truth, I love doing the weekly interviews. But it's trips like these that really do help distract me from all the bullshit going on in life, and I need that sometimes. Hopefully, you like it. Please let me know by emailing me at mike@thepowellmovement.com. Also, that's the email address for any of your questions, concerns, or guest suggestions. And I should also note that at live events, while the sound quality is going to be good, it's not studio sound quality. And I'm sure you get that, but I wanted to let you know. Before we get into it, I want to thank you for coming back each week. I also want to ask you to tell a friend about the show, as it really does help things grow. And finally, please support the incredible brands that make this podcast happen. They are Stanley, Elon Skis, Liquid Force, Best Day Brewing, Outdoor Research, and Peter Glenn Ski and Sports. Now, it's time to take a journey to the first annual Outside Festival. So I'm on a plane to Denver for the first Outside Festival, which is tied to the Big Gear Show, and I really don't know what to expect or what this podcast is going to be about. Actually, that's a lie. I'll get great podcast content from the athletes I know that are going to be at the event. But what the hell is this event? I know the Big Gear Show is a trade show-like event, and I love trade show-like events. They bring so many brands, media, and like-minded people together, and that's really important. That said, I did not come to town for the Big Gear Show. I came to town for the Outside Festival, and the Big Gear Show is an added bonus. When I got to the venue on Friday and walked up on the Big Gear Show, well, it felt like a tiny version of the OR show over the past couple years. None of the big brands were in attendance, and while the e-bike demo component was pretty cool, I had to remind myself I came for the Outside Festival. And after I spent my 8 minutes at the Big Gear Show, because that was really all I needed to walk through all the booths, I went across the street to get my credentials for the Outside Festival, and lucky me, when I get to registration, Chris Jerard, aka CJ, happened to be there. He's a former Powell Movement alumni. He is one of the marketing geniuses behind all things Outside Festival, and he was right there getting registered, and he hooked me up with a production credential, which was key. So now I have access to everything I possibly want at this event just because I ran up on Chris Jerard when he was getting his credentials. So timing is everything in this world, and now I have the credential. The next thing I do is I hop on a golf cart with Chris, and he takes me around to show me the lay of the land. And going into this event, I kept asking myself, What is the purpose of Outside Festival? I mean, is it a music festival? Is it something similar to the GoPro games? Is it a trade show? And to tell you the truth, I don't care. Outside is going to invest in creating something that will help build community, and I'm all about that shit. So when I get the tour of the venue, my mind is blown. Think a huge venue formed around the Colorado State Capitol, and it's packed with so many activations that you could spend an entire weekend on site and not be bored. I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass. This event is a spare no expense, badass, we're gonna fucking blow your minds kind of build. I could barely contain my excitement. I mean, Outside has had some half-baked concepts over the past few years, as they shoot for the moon with a lot of their marketing projects, like the Outerverse. And for whatever reason, those ideas haven't worked as planned, or they haven't gone as planned. But my initial thought on this event is that it will be the future of bringing brands, industry, and consumers together. And bringing the industry together is what Outside did on Friday before the event with their summit. Think a bunch of panels of industry folks talking about marketing, the internet, gender, social, a whole bunch of different things. And I caught a few of the panels and they were awesome. After the event, there was a happy hour and it was time for me to try to get a couple interviews. The most important one was for me to find Outside CEO Robin Thurston and ask him about the why behind this whole Outside Festival deal. Robin gave a welcoming speech, and about a half a minute after he was done, this guy shows up and throws a microphone in his face. Here's what Robin had to say. So I was at your venue earlier today. I kind of got the lay of the land, and looking around, my expectations were blown away. It looks like you have such an incredible event planned for this weekend. But my question to you is, why Outside Festival?
Well, I mean, a couple of reasons. One is there is no consumer event for the outdoor industry. There's a lot of B2B, a lot of trade shows, a lot of film festivals, which are consumer facing, but they don't necessarily expose you to all parts of the outdoors. For sure. And so it was really, somebody used a quote this morning, which I'll use again, which is, it was kind of like CES and South by Southwest had a baby for the outdoor industry, you know? So like, I just think there was this incredible opportunity for us to bring all these people together and sort of celebrate the ideas and share them and, you know, really create new things that sort of, you know, move forward out of an event like this.
So it's a part of like building community within the sports that we haven't had since SIA and OR, and that's totally needed because it's been a big hole. So you guys are creating that. But when you look at this, how are you going to be able to measure it as a success? When you look at this on Monday, is it based on the number of people that come through? Is it based on the feedback? What's going to make it a success?
I mean, I think the feedback from the partners and the supporters is really big. Like, we obviously want to make this better. So, like, how do we listen to whether they're sponsors, whether it's the customer that shows up, whether it's the attendee for the summit? We really want to get all of that feedback in to figure out how do we, you know, I always say in technology, like, version 2 is always better than version 1.
For sure.
And version 3 is always better than version 2. And so you just have to keep listening to the customer to ultimately create a better sort of outcome. How will we measure the weekend? Like, ticket sales will certainly be an impact. I think, you know, certainly the feedback from the musicians and, you know, the other attendees, like, all of that is going to matter. But there is a part of me that says a lot of it is just bringing people together to share these ideas and see if those turn into outcomes.
Okay. And my last question will be, the city in Denver is very involved in this whole thing. And for them, is this something that they're committed to year after year? Is this something that we're going to be able to build on as an industry as well and use it outside as kind of the conduit to creating community in the future?
Well, not only is the city really involved, but the state is very involved. And I think there is a desire to create something that is truly differentiated in the long run and do this over a very long period of time. I mean, Conor last night, who's in OREC, said, we hope we look back 20 or 30 years from now and this has become one of the major events in the industry that does bring the consumer and the industry together.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to try to hit you up on Sunday as well.
No problem.
Good to meet you.
I'll be around.
All right,
Cheers.
Great. Thank you. So it sounds like Outside is doing this for all the right reasons. And while there are ways to measure the success of this one, it really is all about building community. We haven't had an event like this, something bringing people together to celebrate the outdoors, since the peak SIA days. But this thing has the potential to be bigger than the SIA shows. I mean, there are millions of dollars being invested into this event, and it shows. After Robin, I saw Jess Kimura in the crowd. I interviewed Jess earlier this year, and it was a heavy interview. She has such an incredible story, and it was so good to finally meet her. While Jess is known for a lot of things, including her event, The Uninvited, she was invited to Outside Festival, and they paid her way to get here. But they must have known she was a dirtbag snowboarder because she kept getting kicked out of the venue. Jess Kimura, we are here in Denver at the Outside Festival. We are being kicked out of the cocktail hour. Is this the first time you've been kicked out of a party?
So after the panel, I was upstairs and we got kicked out. And then we went to like the medium level and we got kicked out. Then we came here, we got kicked out. And there is a lot of staff here ready to end things.
So this is your third time being kicked out this evening. But can you tell me about the craziest time that you've ever been kicked out of a party or anything in your life? Because I know you've got a story about one.
Oh my God. I don't know. I ripped a guy's pant leg off, like straight off jeans one night when I was going full Hulk at SIA years ago in Denver. So
yeah, that's pretty funny. And so here, do they fly you into Outside Festival and say, hey, you're going to do 3 panels and you're kind of just like stuck up there on a microphone hoping that you do a good job? Is that kind of the deal here?
Yeah, I came in from Mexico yesterday and then I go back again tomorrow. So it was cool to come in and have been in the sun instead of been in a dark room, not talking to people, because these things can be heavily social anxiety inducing. But I don't know. I just kind of gave up the need to try to do good at stuff like this. And I was just like, just say what actually comes out of your mouth, or let it come out of your mouth. And it usually works out. And sometimes it doesn't. And I get kicked out.
Well, I kind of looked at it. I watched you speak today, and there was some phenomenal women up there with you. Some of them very accomplished businesswomen, some of them world champion mountain bikers. And you held your weight with them, or you carried your weight with them. You spoke just as well as they did. And I think the audience appreciated exactly what you had to say, just like them. Let's
closing this event space. If you could start making your way towards the gate. Hello.
Are you kicking us out?
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay. I just wanted to get that on record. It's all right. So you were there with so many incredible women. Do you talk to those women beforehand and kind of exchange information, and like, are you going to look to them as mentors after this?
Yeah, I had one Zoom meeting with them, and then I met them like for coffee beforehand, and I was really nervous because I thought they were going to be not uptight, but just like not like me, and I wouldn't even know like the language to speak to them, but they're just like me. They just had a dream and went after it and didn't know what they were doing and pretended they knew, and now they're up there. So it just goes to show anyone can do anything. Just have the balls to try.
Wise words from Jess Kimura. And from there, we were ushered out of the venue, and that was the nicest, most polite way possible to be kicked out of an event. Thank you to all the folks at the Denver Art Museum for putting up with us who were loitering around way too late. When it was time to head back to the hotel, I realized that I had to piss so bad I could taste it, and I may not make it to a bathroom. But I had my production credential, and I ducked into the venue. I used a porta potty on site, and crisis averted. Thank you so much, CJ, for helping me avoid embarrassment. I definitely needed those porta potties. You made that happen, and you didn't even know about it. After I get back to the hotel, I make plans to have dinner and beers with Malone Camp, the lawyer extraordinaire for Mountain Gazette. So we have a few beers, we play Pop-A-Shot, and I know I've mentioned this before, but I am really, really good at Pop-A-Shot. But when we were playing at the bar, I was sucking. And then a bunch of 20-year-old kids came up and they schooled me, and I was pretty frustrated. All I could think was, now I'm 50 years old and my skills are diminishing. But when I played my last game, I was on fire. My old skills came back. I beat all the 20-year-olds, and I do what I always do. I hit the high score. So age is just a number. From there, I high-fived Malone Camp. I headed back to the hotel. And after a 29,000 step day, I'm calling it a night, and I'm getting psyched for tomorrow and the first day of Outside Festival. So I wake up bright and early and head over to the Outside Festival. My plan is to see Shaun White speak to kick off the event. While I've seen Shaun shred guitar at the Target House at the X Games years ago, and he comes up on the podcast all the time, I've never met the guy. And his hour talk was a refreshing look into his life and times. He had the audience hanging on every word as he was funny, insightful, and a really great speaker. And after it was over, I was going to try and hunt him down to get him on the podcast. But when Shaun White is at an event like this, he has a lot of things going on. So it was going to be tough to get him on. It wasn't going to happen right there after he finished his speech. And I left the event and I started walking around the festival grounds. Yesterday, I told you how great I thought the event was going to be based on the build out and the venue. In my interviews today, I'll let the athletes and personalities on site let you know what they think, because while I think this is the best event I've been to in the outdoors in forever, there are so many opinions on this other than mine, and I want to share those with you. And the first person I ran into is legendary Denver artist and snowboarder and thoughtful person, Pat Milbery, and I found out what he was up to and his thoughts on the show.
We have a whole mental health activation here set up. So it's for the Open Hearts collection that I have. And so each one of the products we have here, we're launching like a full collection. And each one of the products benefits SOS Outreach. So we give back for the mentoring organization and SOS.
That is so cool. And whenever I think of Denver, I think of Pat Milbery, whether it's the soccer team or the Nuggets or anything that's going on. You're involved because your art is so amazing. But when you look at an event like this in your hometown, not your hometown, but what your adopted hometown these days, how cool is it to see an event and a build out like this in your city?
Special. I mean, it's unique because we've when there's been trade shows like Outdoor Retail or SIA, it's so limited to people that have credentials or pay a very high price to exhibit or be. It's not welcome to everyone. Whereas the Outdoor Festival is so accessible and it's such low barriers of entry, and that's super, super important because the outdoors is meant for everyone to share. And so Denver is like truly the outdoor capital of the United States. And I'm just a big fan of what Conor Hall had a vision for launching this. And I think it's incredible that both the mayor of Denver is super behind it and a governor of our state is super behind it. And I think it's going to bring a lot of people together collaboratively, but also really have and allow both arts and music and climbing and hiking and a lot of the brands to connect with people and their consumers at a very organic level. But also I really think it is meant to be more accessible to all. So that's what I think is really special what they're creating here. And you got to start somewhere, and this is a big hit, big start, but it's something that I think will really gain a lot of momentum and hopefully be something that we can have annually and keep it growing.
So some deep thoughts from Pat Milbery, and that's the great thing about Pat. He's never afraid to show how much he cares, and he's always looking to make a difference. And his art is featured all over Denver, and it really does brighten so many people's days. After I saw Pat, I headed over to the Ford Bronco activation where I ran into Colter Hinchliffe, who I interviewed a few months ago on the podcast, but another person I've never met. So here's my chat with Colter. We are at the Ford Bronco setup here at Outdoor Festival, and you're a sponsored athlete by Ford Bronco. Do they hook you up with a brand new truck every year?
Well, I've had one for 2 years, and I just switched it out for a brand new one about 3 days ago, so I'm pretty excited to be in a brand new whip.
That's pretty insane. And so Ford is here, they're exhibiting, and this is Denver, this is your state. And have you ever seen anything like this in the state, like an event like this?
Yeah, I didn't expect this to be such a big deal. I saw it on the calendar and got the invite and came down, and I thought it was going to be, a nice little gathering with a few booths here and there, but it's a full-blown taking up the middle of the whole city, and a lot of people milling around, tons of companies, and it's just pretty rad event.
So from my perspective, I look at this as it's starting to build community again within the industry. Not saying it's starting to. It's you bring all these people together, it's going to build community. Do you look at something like this as something that can grow and the whole ski industry can be a part of it and it can be something where everybody gets together once a year?
Yeah, it's cool to see friendly faces that I haven't seen in a while. This is an outdoor festival in the beginning of summer, and I am seeing a lot of skier friends down here and friends from other outdoor sports, and it is cool to bring everyone together like this. It's fun to see those faces and have that camaraderie.
And are you going to be here throughout the weekend, and what band are you most excited to see?
Yeah, I will be here all weekend. It's just today and tomorrow is the event, and I'll be scooching home on Monday back to Aspen. I can't remember the name. It might be Thundercats. Something like that was the one band that I've heard some songs from.
It's time for my first sponsor break, and I'm so stoked to have Liquid Force as a partner. Liquid Force has been supplying the world with the best wake gear since 1995. And that premium gear, the wake, park, boat, surf, and foil boards, are not just equipment. They're a statement that screams, I'm not just in this for the activity, this is my lifestyle. While Liquid Force boards are packed with technology that will make anyone from the first timer to the up-and-coming pro a better rider, they don't throw all that in your face. You feel that tech when you ride, and you'll find all the details around the tech on their website. But Liquid Force takes pride in creating a fun, inclusive culture that encourages everyone to escape the drama of everyday life and have some fun on the water. To make your summer better than ever before, head on over to liquidforce.com and see what I'm talking about. If you find something you like, I'm going to save you 15% with my one-time usage code. At checkout, enter the code POWEL15. That's all capital letters, the number 15 with no spaces, and you'll get that discount when you check out. My next sponsor is Peter Glenn Ski and Sports. Summer is right around the corner, and based on the past couple of years, it's going to get really, really hot. And getting in the water is the perfect way to enjoy the heat. But you need to do it right, and Peter Glenn is your one-stop shop for all of your needs this summer. Think wakeboard, water ski, kneeboard, tubes, swimwear. They have everything to make your summer more fun and functional. Peter Glenn has all the brands, all the products, a knowledgeable staff, a best-in-class website if you can't make it into their stores, and a low price guarantee. That's right. If you find a lower price on a product that Peter Glenn is selling at a reputable dealer, call up Peter Glenn, let them know that price. They will match that for you. That really does help support the show by buying from Peter Glenn, and they're going to give you free shipping on orders of $50 or more. Peter Glenn isn't one of those big guys trying to take over the industry. They're the mom and pop shop that you've trusted to get your gear you need at the best prices for over 70 years. To find out more, head on over to peterglenn.com. My final sponsor this round is Best Day Brewing. And while I love the taste of a good beer, I don't always need the alcohol. I mean, my life revolves around driving my kid places, running errands, interviewing people, and all of these things I do better when I don't have a head full of alcohol. These days, when I'm not partying, I still like to enjoy an ice-cold beer, and that's where Best Day Brewing comes into play. I love their hazy IPA, the Kolsch that you can get on all Alaska airline flights, their Electro Lime Cerveza, which is the first Mexican-style NA beer that I've loved, and their new white Belgian style. They're all just so amazing and have just as much flavor as any alcoholic beer you're going to find. And they average about 60 calories a beer, and they won't get you in trouble. That's when I'm not partying. And when I am partying, I mix in a few Best Days throughout the night, and I found that by doing that, I can stay out until last call. You should try it. To have the best day or night ever, head on over to bestdaybrewing.com and get 15% off your first order. And if you make that order over $50, we'll throw in free shipping. You can thank me later. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. So Colter is just as chill in person as he sounded on the podcast, a really good dude. And while I'll sound like a broken record asking everyone about this event and how the outdoor industry can help start building community again, the reason for that is because I think it's really important. And Colter seemed to recognize that even though we were at a summer event, it was packed full of winter people. So it truly is build something cool and they will come. And speaking of they will come, as I'm talking to Colter, Shaun White shows up at the High West whiskey booth. He works with High West, and while he was at their booth, it was totally packed. So looking around, I was like, oh man, I'm not going to be able to get Shaun White on the podcast here because it's so crowded. And then about 30 minutes later, I'm walking away and I see Shaun in a grassy field and he's talking to one person. This was my chance to chat with Shaun White. And here's what's crazy. I'm never nervous when I do these interviews. I mean, I've had Jeff Ament from Pearl Jam at my house and I had no nerves whatsoever. But as I walked up to Shaun, I could feel the nerves kicking in. But who cares? I put my mic in his face and I did my thing. So you've just invested in We Are Camp, which is super exciting for the whole industry. And you've really put your money where your mouth is, investing in snowboarding. Is that kind of the future of Shaun White, is just kind of building things for the kids and doing stuff for the future of the sport?
I mean, I'm investing time and, everything into things I believe in, and like, that was such a natural fit. Like, I went to Hood as a kid every single summer, and I was like, this is amazing. I gotta keep this going or make it even better for the next generation. There's just so many things that, I never really thought to do or had the time to do. And now in retirement, it's definitely like a position I'm taking, and I'm proud to be working with some great people to do that. And like I mentioned in my talk, I don't know if you're up there, but big announcement coming in June. So that's definitely something.
June 17th, right?
17th. But that's going to be awesome. It's something that like I'm really passionate about. I think the sport really needs it, and we're like kind of. I've let a few athletes know and some people, but I'm excited to make this announcement soon. So,
Sick, man. And when you were at camp growing up, who were the pros that kind of like took you under their wing or stood out, or the ones that you just thought were crazy?
I mean, at camp, I would see Danny Cass. I would see, oh my gosh, there were so many heroes there. Well, Danny and the Grenade Crew really, they were like close to my age, so I remember freaking out over them. But gosh, we'd see Brian Aguchi, we saw Jeff Brushy, we saw, Terry Hawkinson. So many people came through and just like, and I think I was filmed for my first standard film, me doing like an alley-oop McTwist in the half pipe, and one of their filmers was like, do you mind if I shoot that? And I ended up in the movie. And that really like changed a lot for me. So Mount Hood Summer Camp.
Full circle moment, man. Thank you for your time. The big news here is that Shaun had mentioned in his talk that on June 17th, he's going to make an announcement about something that he's working on, and it'll be a game-changing thing for snowboarding. And it sounds like it'll be most beneficial for pro snowboarders out there. So it's cool to see how much Shaun is doing for snowboarding. I can't think of another pro who's invested close to what Shaun has into the sport. And regardless of how much that dude does for the sport, he'll always have his haters too, which is kind of lame at this point, but whatever. After I finished with Shaun, we chatted for a few more minutes, and man, I don't know if I was starstruck or what, but I was still nervous. The last time I felt this way when I was speaking with DMC from Run DMC at the X Games in Philly in like 2001. But the more I think about it, there was a reason I was nervous. It's a rare thing in life to meet someone who's the best ever at what they do. And that's what I did. I mean, looking at Shaun's career, he is the GOAT. And I'm going to try to get him on a full podcast at some point. But back to the event, my next stop was to the climbing wall, which was also the hub for Outside TV. And this place was packed all day long. When I walked up, Conrad Anker was on the mic. And while I'm not a climber, I know what a legend Conrad is. And I thought to myself, well, even though I don't know that much about his sport, I should go up to Conrad and ask him something. And without having a solid plan, I walked up and I asked him about the event and Everest and what he's been up to.
Were you surprised when you first showed up at the venue how amazing the venue actually is?
It's wonderful right here in downtown Denver, and everything's been transformed into this outdoor space. We've got live music, we've got a climbing competition, there's a chance to go look at the new products out there. So it's like the consumer trade show, but instead of it being set up for the retailers, everyone can come here.
Yeah, so we're here, and then I'm sure that you've been following on the internet and different things, just the situation in Everest, because that's all the pictures that are coming up in my feed lately.
Yeah.
And are you just blown away now when you see one side where it's just a couple crews, but like 100 people in a line? Does it blow you away now, or is that what you expect every year?
Yeah, the south side, which originates in Nepal, and the north side is in Tibet, and so there's just more people on the south side. And then you're limited by weather, so things do bunch up, but this year was relatively good. There's 5 fatalities. Last year there was 17 or something like that. So it's a little bit safer up there, and people want to pursue their dreams, and we can understand that and respect them for that.
Yeah, and so you said that you have a project coming out. Can you tell us what you've been working on?
One of the things that's dear to my heart is Memphis Rocks. I'm on the board with our group that works there. So taking climbing and what climbing brings to people, which is trust and communication, fitness, both bone density, stretching, strength, and then it also involves your mind, and getting that message and sharing it with as many people as possible.
So I was a total fish out of water talking with Conrad, and really the only reason that Everest question came up is because Adrian Bollinger, who was on the podcast, and his Alpenglow expedition team just summited Everest from the north side, and I had that stuck in my head. So congrats to Adrian and his team, and thank you to Conrad for answering this kook's questions. My next stop was back to the Ideas section of the Outside Festival to hear Caroline Gleich speak. I sponsored Caroline back in the day when I was with K2, and she's an Elan athlete these days, but more importantly, she's running for U.S. Senate, and she's a total badass that I'm honored to call a friend.
So I'm here with Caroline Gleich, and you just did a talk in front of like 300 people. How comfortable are you in front of big crowds and speaking?
Well, I'm still working on getting more comfortable, and I sweat profusely, so kind of airing out after that. And it's one of those things where you got to really lean into your fear, and face it, the discomfort. It's not really going to get that much more comfortable, but you keep practicing. It's like steep skiing, you know?
And it's only going to get bigger, the audiences that you're going to be in front of, so that's kind of exciting and scary all at the same time. But you've taken this position where you're running for office, and when you think about the chances that you have, if you were to put a percentage on it, what would you say the percentage is that you could get into office?
Well, I don't like to think in those terms, because honestly, there's a lot of factors against the odds are not in my favor, to be fully honest. Like, it is a long shot, but I believe that there is a real power in running, and in that Utah and America deserves a competitive election. And if we don't run a super strong race and we don't run to win, it's a detriment to our state and to our country. So I'm giving it everything I've got because I believe in Utah.
Well, I want you to win, and I've donated to your campaign.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. And a question about the donations is, what the hell is going on with all the emails? I must get 9 emails a week from you.
I do not write them myself. I approve everything, but apparently it works because we raise a lot of money from the emails and the comment text, and you can feel free to unsubscribe. But
I would never do that. I'm like, what if she sees that I unsubscribe?
I'm not going to see that you unsubscribe, and I hear you, and I think I've heard a stat that it takes 30 interactions before people really know what's going on. And so it's like that constant contact, text, email, Instagram, Facebook, phone calls, all these different ways. And, it is a real challenge to fundraise for this. And so I'm really trusting my digital team to do what they know what to do.
And so you said earlier that it's going to take like $15 million to get a seat, or it took that in 2022. I mean, where are you in fundraising? Are you over like $10 million in fundraising?
No, we have almost raised $600,000.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, so we're trying to run this Senate race on a $2 million budget. That's our goal, which is a real shoestring budget. So we're pinching pennies everywhere we can. And there's a lot that goes into legal and compliance, because as a federal candidate, every single contribution needs to be logged. It needs to be verified that it's from a U.S. citizen over the 18 years, their employer. All of this needs to be verified for federal compliance. And so it's a lot of paperwork, and it employs a lot of different people. And our team is really scrappy youth, a lot of young women running it. And I'm excited that we're creating this infrastructure to help elect Democratic candidates in the state of Utah for decades to come.
Well, I've known you for 20 some odd years, it seems like, and the chips have always been stacked against you, and you've always turned the tides in your favor. So I'm excited to see what happens this November and for the rest of your life and career in politics.
And thanks for believing in me as my team manager back in the day for a ski company, because there are a lot of people who didn't believe in me, and it just takes one person to help and to open that door. So thank you for opening that door, for giving me opportunities to help keep it going, and also giving me extra work with these rollerblade shoots, with the inline skating shoots in the summer. Those were so fun. I was always trying to hustle to make that extra buck so that I could keep it going, and that's what you got to do, is you got to hustle, and you got to be creative, and you have to be hardworking, relentless, and sometimes, it's maybe a little toxic positivity. You got to bury that darkness deep inside and only let it out sometimes. But thank you for being someone who opened doors, believed in me, and gave me an opportunity.
Well, it was a pleasure to be able to do that. I'm stoked to be able to know you now.
Yeah.
And you're an amazing public speaker, so don't be worried about it in the future.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Also, people have their off days, but I'm trying to get it so dialed that even if I'm like no sleep, running on fumes, total zombie, that I can bust it out.
The way that chat ended really gave me the chills. While I know I helped Caroline a little bit, hearing her say that it takes just one person to believe, and I was one of those people, well, that just made me feel like my team manager job actually did make a difference. And it wasn't just with Caroline, because the next person I ran into was another woman that I put on K2 who has gone on to have an incredible career on snow. And while she's still a pro skier, I have a feeling that Amie Engerbretson is going to have a huge media career ahead of her. And we talk about the event and what Amie has going on with Outside TV.
Amie, you and I are always hypercritical of what magazines and media groups do. We've had conversations behind the scenes about this over and over. What do you think about this event that Outside's putting on?
I mean, I was really curious to see how it was going to be because I didn't know what to expect. I've never been to anything like this. I haven't heard of an outdoor magazine putting on a festival. And so far, I think it's cool because it's like exciting and intimate. There's a lot of people here. People seem hyped. The Thundercat's about to play. I don't know who Thundercat is, but I'm excited by their presence. And I think that the outdoor industry trying to make things more experiential and connection-oriented, like after the pandemic and stuff, like people want this. People want to come together. They want to be in real life. They want to hear people talk in person. So I think it's cool. I think it's a cool step towards that.
Well, in bringing people away from being in person, it sounds like you have a new show or a new something going on. I saw you and Selema were doing something. I don't know all the details. Can you let us know what's going on?
So Outside has a new TV show coming out called Ultimate Male Athlete. And they reached out to me about competing in this competition TV show they're putting on. So athletes compete in skiing, like uphill and downhill, rock climbing, and mountain biking. And they hit me up, they're like, hey, can you be a competitor on the show? I was like, yo, I actually don't know how to rock climb. And they're like, oh shit. And I'm like, they asked me, they're like, can you host? And I was like, I don't know, probably. And they're like, okay, cool, will you be a host? And then like 3 weeks before it came out, like we started filming, I found out that I was co-hosting with Selema Mosquela. It was like the legend of hosting in outside sports. And anyways, we filmed the show, we did a competition, and it was really fun, and it comes out in a week, I hear. And I haven't seen any of it yet. I haven't seen anything, but I hear it's good. But from personally, like what I saw firsthand there, like what these athletes like put themselves through was crazy. And I think it's really fun because like single sport athletes. Like, we all like other stuff. Like, I don't feel like I'm good at anything but skiing, but it was like cool to see that arena, and I think it's going to be a really fun show. And like, I mean, I'm with you. I haven't seen it yet, so I'm excited.
So that's super exciting for Amie, and we had to cut that interview short as Thundercat was about to take the stage. At this point, I was so tired. I had been going for about 12 hours, and I've been in the sun for the most part, and I finally sit down and take a seat in the VIP lounge for a rest. And while I was sitting there, Luis Benitez, the Chief Impact Officer for the Trust of Public Land, and a guy who has done so much over the years to make the Outside Festival a reality, came and sat down next to me. There are so many people behind the scenes that deserve a lot of credit. And from what I hear, Luis is right at the top of that list. And today, his book, Higher Ground, How the Outdoor Recreation Industry Can Save the World, is out now. I'm going to check it out. I think you should too. Luis sat down next to me, and he and I talk about the event, and he described what the Outside Festival is better than anyone else has so far.
So basically, what we're trying to do is build a movement for the outdoor recreation industry across the country. So I used to be the director for the Outdoor Recreation Industry Office in Colorado under then Governor, now Senator Hickenlooper. And so ultimately, this whole thing is a result of trying to invite the entire community in to understanding what the outdoor industry does. Instead of things like a trade show, which is very business to business, instead of something like a pure festival, which is very just all about somebody buying a ticket and having fun, something like the Outside Festival, what we wanted to do is have an intersection between policy, between community, and having fun.
That's the best I've heard the explanation of this whole event. And when you think of it, it's the intersection of all of those things. But when you look at it, Denver, this city, and Colorado, this state, it was the hub. We had SIA, and everybody came here. They took it from Vegas, and they brought it here, and they made it theirs. OR came here as well, and then this city lost everything. How did that happen? And is this almost replacing that hole in what was a different world back then?
Oh, yeah, well, so I was in the chair when Outdoor Retailer came here. So was very involved in that whole process. Had left that chair to go work for VF and run their global government affairs, and watched as they tried to renegotiate with the city what this could or should be, what this did or didn't mean. And the biggest thing I think that was missed, they forgot that this wasn't just a trade show about product. It was a community gathering for our family. And so in the context of what we lost versus what we gained, I think there was a very clear point where we said, you know what? If that's not your focus area, then Colorado's probably not the right home for you anymore. And as they left and went back to Utah, that was the genesis of the conversation to begin building this.
And in 5 years, where do you see this event?
Bigger. You hear the phrase, the South by Southwest for the outdoor industry all the time. I say it often. I think one of the things that we deeply believe in is that when activations start to happen organically, when gravity starts to move at its own pace, the thing that I define as success with this is when events come here that we know nothing about, had nothing to do with building them, but they're a part of the core. And they understand that by being here and by being connected to the family and by being present, it makes everyone better. That's the hope in 5 years.
And my last question, do you see this as where like the brands, the K2s, the Burtons, all the ski snowboard companies at some point, and then your summer brands as well, can all congregate and be that community and then have a party with bands at the end of it?
100%, but here's the difference, because you remember Snow Show, you remember OR, which is very B2B, right?
Yeah.
Any brand that comes here and comes to this, you will not be able to lock yourself off from the average person wanting to understand who you are and what you do. So absolutely brands will be invited in, but it is not about just you doing business with another brand. It's about explaining to your consumer what you stand for and why.
I was really lucky to have Luis come over and sit next to me. And while I've gotten a lot of good info on the event, I feel like I understand everything a lot better after talking with him. I guess that's what passion for making a difference combined with a Harvard education will do. So after I finished with Luis and the band ended, I said my goodbyes for the night. Day one of the Outside Festival was a total home run. I headed out of the gates, I made my way back to the hotel, and after another 30,000 step day, I'm looking for another big day at Outside Festival tomorrow. Now it's time for me to go to sleep. It's time for my second round of sponsors, and Elan Skis doesn't need to sponsor this podcast in the summertime, but they do it because they understand the importance of cultivating the stories that make the snow industry what it is. So while they're cultivating stories off snow, on snow, Elan is building a cult following here in the US, and there are a few reasons for that. First is that the award-winning Ripstick line has proven time and again to make you a better skier. The reason why? Elan uses the best materials known to man, and that's no joke. This is the same Elan known for building award-winning luxury yachts, so there's never any cutting corners, and the fit and finish is better than anything else on the ski wall. Just look up and down and compare your Elans to anything else, and you'll see the difference. The second reason why Elan's selling more skis in the US is their Playmaker line. Yep, Elan has a line of twin tips that will go head-to-head with anything on the mountain. They're light, they're lively, and they're built better than any other twin tips on the wall. I'm skiing the 101, and it's been my daily driver for 2 years, and they're so much fun. Before you buy your next pair of skis, please demo a pair of Elans, or just head on over to elanskis.com, pick up a pair, and trust me, you're going to elevate your skiing experience. Next up, it's Outdoor Research, and I've been using OR products since I moved to Seattle almost 25 years ago because they outperform everything on the market. I mean, Outdoor Research builds products to perform in the wet, soggy, cold weather of the Pacific Northwest. And when you live where we do, you need to have the best in class, and that's what OR's always been. While OR's always been known for building the industry-leading gear for mountaineers, and they still do that, over the past few years, they've been focusing on working with their A-list athletes in the ski and snowboard world to create new fits and kits for the snow scene, which everyone has seen on X Games podiums and on legends like Mark Abma. And now, OR is launching its freewheel mountain bike collection, and there's no cutting corners here either. Well, I could tell you about it. Here's what the folks at Free Hub Magazine had to say about what OR is doing in bike. Outdoor Research, with its legacy rooted in scientific inquiry and a passion for the outdoors, has once again raised the bar, offering riding gear that's not just functional, but also stylish and durable. The meticulous designs and thoughtful engineering of the Freewheel collection have the power to transform the mountain biking experience. Reviews don't get much better than that, and to see all the new products that OR has, head on over to outdoorresearch.com. My final sponsor this round is Stanley, the iconic Northwest brand that invented the category of keeping things hot and cold over 100 years ago. You remember Stanley from your grandfather's green thermos that kept his coffee hot and cold forever when he took you out on adventures. Well, Stanley still makes that bottle and so much more. I know you know this because they are absolutely blowing up all over the world. With Stanley, you can think tumblers, water bottles, barware, camping utensils, coolers, vacuum bottles. There really is something for everyone, and you aren't going to find them overpriced like a lot of copycat designer brands that have popped up recently. Stanley is the originator, and they pride themselves on providing you with the best products at the best value. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast.
So it's time for day 2 of the festival, day 3 for me in total as I went to the summit on the first day, so I'm pretty worked. And while I've had a ton of fun at the festival for the 20 or so hours I've been on site so far, these long days are exhausting. But regardless, my plan is to head to the event, and I'm going to get 20 to 25 minutes more of content so I can fill out this podcast. I'm going to check out the music. I'm going to find people to interview. I'm going to have some beers and really just enjoy the rest of Outside Festival. And as I'm walking to the festival, I get a text from legendary filmmaker Greg Stump. He lets me know that he's at the bar and I should come meet him. And if you don't know who Greg is, well, he pretty much invented the word extreme, or at least he stole it from the French extreme skiers back in the day, and he brought it into pop culture lexicon here in the States, and that's where your extreme Taco Bell tacos came from, and all different things. Well, Stump was on the forefront of that, and he's one of the most eccentric and awesome people I've met in the ski industry, and here's what I got when I caught up with Stumpy.
Stumpy, you got here yesterday. They flew you in for this event. How many people are flying you in for events and putting you up and letting you be the rock star Greg Stump that you are with nothing to do here but enjoy the event?
This is rather unique. Usually I have to do something. But these guys are so nice, and yeah. I'm so glad I came. That first band yesterday, my life has changed. Say She. I mean, I'd heard them on KCRW before. I knew a couple songs, but boy, live, unbelievable. And then Lettuce was great, but I mean, I'd hate to have to follow Say She. And Thundercat was fabulous. I mean, it's just unreal music.
And you had an ankle replacement recently, and you were walking around great. You look awesome. And has it changed your life, just the way that you're able to move around now?
It's a huge difference because I was wearing an ACO cast just to walk. And I couldn't walk. And with COVID, it got delayed for 3 years, and then it's a big recovery. It's like, it's 6 month recovery from this thing because they put a brand new ankle in. But I'm going to see my surgeon in a couple of weeks, and I'm going to tell him every single day that I'm walking. I thank you.
What's next? What does your year look like? What do you do? Like at a life now, you're at an age where you probably can collect it, so you get Social Security now?
Oh yeah, of course. Well, I did my residency at Aspen last year, that was kind of the big project, and that was
4 nights.
Yeah, we did a whole month.
Yeah, but I mean it was one night a week.
4 nights.
Yeah.
But we sold out the first show, and then Aspen Film added another theater, and we sold that out instantly, and then the whole rest of the thing was sold out. We could have sold 2 more theaters. I mean, it was unreal.
Stumpy, we should talk about doing like a Blizzard premiere in Seattle. I know you've already done one before, but I have an area where we could do that. We could do a live podcast, and we could have an incredible event. You could be on site, and we could talk, and we could both make a little money and have a good time. Are you in?
I accept.
All right, fair enough. So, Stumpy, we will talk about that later on.
Say She, man. If you've never heard of this band, Say She. I heard it here at the Outside Festival. Heard them yesterday. They blew everybody else away.
Last question. You've been to so many festivals because you're a music guy, and this is a first-year event. What do you think of how they've done?
Oh, it's fabulous. I mean, and everything, the organization, just everything. It's really nicely done right downtown Denver. I mean, this is how it's done. Perfect. There's no, compost trash, recycle. It's very green, and there's no plastic bottles anywhere. And
that's one thing I've noticed too. We talked about it earlier. Yeah. I've not seen one single-use plastic bottle, and when I say that, I look over there and I see my first one. But I haven't seen one until then. And then this guy walks by with one too. All right. So maybe I just haven't been looking.
And there's a third.
God damn it.
Oh, man, I tell you what.
But that's 3, but those are the first 3 that I've seen all weekend. So, Stumpy, great to talk to you. Okay. Glad to see you doing so well. And that's about it. So we cut off. We were going to stop recording, and you're like, well, the project that I'm working on. I'm like, what are you talking about? We were supposed to talk about this in the podcast. What are you working on, Stumpy?
I am working on a movie about Sheriff Bob Broaddus from Aspen, Colorado, who was the sheriff in Aspen for 25 years. And I'm working with a bunch of his friends, and we're going to make an hour-long documentary called The Good Sheriff. Because Bob Broaddus was the good sheriff. Like, if he pulled you over the first time for drunk driving, he'd get you in his car and he'd drive you home. Do it the second time, doesn't work so good. But he was just everyone's friend in Aspen, and anybody that was in Aspen in those 24 years, Bob Broaddus, they'll start crying because they loved him so much. And he passed, but he was best friends with Hunter Thompson. There we go.
So Stumpy has a new project about a dead dude, and after I left Greg, I walked over to the Ford Bronco area, and I ran into Bronco ambassador and legendary airman Julian Carr, and Julian and I caught up for a couple minutes as well. So I'm standing here with Julian Carr. I'm looking at his free red Bronco. It looks like it's definitely been off-roading. You can kind of see some wear and tear underneath. They probably like that here when they see that you've used it and brought it here, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was like, hey, do you want it muddy or do you want it clean? Because it's real muddy right now. And they're like, if you can, get it cleaned up. But it's kind of perched up so you can see the undercarriage, and I didn't clean the undercarriage, so the underneath is all muddy.
All right, well, you are known not just for Broncos because you have that whole world. You have a Bronco podcast. You're an ambassador for the brand, and you restore 78 and 79 only Broncos. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Pretty good for the top of my head right there. And you're known for your Broncos, but you're known for going huge. In the past 365 days, what's the biggest you've gone?
So every year I usually cross paths with a pretty significant size cliff, but this year, smallest I've gone in a long time, it was like a 40-footer. But it still took everything you got to focus, because still 40 feet's pretty big. But yeah, 40 feet was the biggest this last year.
All right, well, I figured I had to ask you about that. You're also known as an events guy. Your Cirque Series, how's that going? How many events this summer, and how big has that gotten?
Thanks, man. Yeah, I'm starting to transition right now, so starting to basically day-to-day, putting in the 40 hours a week on Cirque Series. It's 6 races this year. We are hosting the USA Track and Field National Championship at our snowbird race, and most of our races are already sold out, so things are really gaining some traction there. It's a fun project for sure.
You're an events guy as well, which I just mentioned, we just talked about, and you're at this first-year event, which is like a huge thing, probably maybe a little bit of a bigger budget event than the Cirque Series. And what would you, if you had to grade this one, what would your grade be for a first-year event, and why?
For a first year, I'm giving it B+. I think
there's so many things you have to think through as an events director, and I think they did a fantastic job. I'll give them an A on that. I just think the caliber of a couple of things, mostly the music, could have been A. But other than that, I think they got a lot of momentum. I think the word of mouth is going to be incredible, and I think they're going into an A next year.
Next up for me is Mike Arzt. He's the owner of the Public Works. He's been on the podcast before. He's done a ton of work behind the scenes on the Outdoor Festival. He knows all about events, and he's one of the kindest humans you could ever meet. So it was nice to finally catch up with Mike in person, and we talked about the event, the costs, and all that kind of stuff. I'm with Mike Arzt in one of your 3 RVs that are on site here. Mike, when did you start working on this festival?
I don't know if there's any clear start. I think it's been a vision of a lot of people here in Colorado for quite a while. I feel like it's brewing and CJ from outside and Conor Hall from Outdoor Rec Department of the state of Colorado government really had the vision and the will to push this thing to where we sit today.
And I know you're contracted to do a lot of work here, but when you think of an event of this scope, being that you do a lot of events, what does something like this cost to put on? Is it like $5 to $10 million?
Oh, I have no idea. We're such a small part.
But I'm just wondering what your guess is. If you had to guess, if someone said, estimate, and what do you think it costs? You think it's 5? You think it's 6? You think it's 2?
I think somewhere in that 5 to 10 million is probably right. Like, we've shot and filmed at so many different events. We've been at some for, you're there for setup or whatever, but to truly be at this one, moving our trailers and everything in and setting up from the beginning and just watching like generators and stages and people and vendors and to watch what it takes to pull this together it's amazing.
You probably hear if there's any problems. I'm sure there's radios going on and you see people walking really fast if there's anything going on. Has there been any hiccups here, or has it been as well-oiled of a machine as it looks like to me?
I have not seen a major challenge, and we planned so heavily coming into this, and by the time you're on your 25th call, you wonder if you're over-planning, but really to have this much going on for a year one event, it's been so smooth, and when there's been a bit of a challenge or maybe an opportunity pops up where the mayor's somewhere, the governor, and they wants a film crew there, like, we have had enough people ready to react and adjust schedules. And we're one of the content crews, but there's 4 others that we're all working together, which is super fun. I mean, I'm getting to work with Josh Haskins, who I've worked with from Warren Miller. He's here running one crew. So, I mean, it's awesome to get to be in the mix of such a big production and feel like a part of it.
Thinking about the amount of money put into one event, it's incredible to me. And sure, they're going to be able to recoup some of their costs on ticket sales and sponsorship, but it's still a big dice roll that no brand in the outdoors has ever really been willing to take until now. And so while I'm doing these interviews, everybody told me that I need to interview Conor Hall, the outdoor industry director for Colorado and one of the visionaries behind this event. So my final pieces of this podcast puzzle are going to be hunting down Conor, chatting with one of the other visionaries behind the Outside Festival, CJ. And CJ and I have been trying to connect all weekend, but he's been so busy that we haven't had a chance to talk. And then I need to track down Robin Thurston, the CEO of Outside, for his final take on this amazing event. And so while I'm thinking of exactly what I need to do to make this podcast happen, I'm hanging out at the Public Works area with Mike Arzt and Tom and the whole crew, and up walks Conor. I've talked to a lot of people throughout the weekend about what's going on here at Outside Fest. Everybody's having a great time, all of that. And it sounds like it's either the idea of yourself or CJ, of you guys together. How did this whole thing come into play?
Yeah, great question. Turns out I have no background in creating large-scale events or music promotion or anything. But 2 years ago when I was coming into this role leading the Outdoor Recreation Industry Office, I was talking with all these different industry leaders across, the sector, and asking them, what do you want to see? What could we create that would be helpful and additive to the industry? And almost all of them said, we want a space to come together and connect, work on issues like protecting our public land and water, trade issues, tariff issues, providing more equitable access to the outdoors, and a space where we can, build relationship and connect. This is a naturally connective, collaborative industry, and we're all here because we love the same thing, which is the outdoors and time spent outside, and that's a powerful uniting force. And so we looked out across this, this space in a $1 trillion industry and recognized that didn't really exist. We didn't have a true gathering place for the full industry, and so we said, let's create it. And it turns out Robin Thurston, the CEO of Outside, was having some very similar conversations. Same with CJ and John and his team and others. And so we connected, and we had this amazing conversation. We said, let's do this together. That's a powerful partnership between the state of Colorado and the biggest media brand in the outdoors.
Is it one of those things where you guys are having beers and it comes out of that?
Yeah, and it was one of those conversations that was like the energy behind it, where you're just like aligned and you're jiving, and that's what we've all brought to. We've all brought so much passion because we care so deeply about the space, and we care about getting people outside and inspiring people, especially kids, to be outside, and more equitable access, sustainability, all these things that have been the anchor of this festival. And I just, again, like the biggest thing I've ever planned is my wedding, and this is like my wedding times 100. But thank God for CJ and John and Sharon and Robin, and like those guys are such pros, and they're so creative, and they work so hard. And we brought in Superfly, and we brought in Groundswell Experiential Productions, like some of the best in the business, not only in Colorado but in the country. And that's, I think, why this has been so successful, even for a first-time endeavor.
It's a first-time endeavor, but I mean, you can figure that this is going to get 50% better next year. I mean, the complaints from everybody, or not everybody, the complaints, if you hear any complaints from people, it's like, hey, I don't know the musical acts as well as maybe I should. Right. And they're big musical acts, just that maybe this demographic doesn't know as well. But other than that, there are no complaints whatsoever. Everything went according to plan. You paid attention to detail.
Even better. I mean, honestly, I was just talking to those guys, and all of us are just blown away. And we are getting such great positive feedback, and just people recognizing this is powerful and this is cool to all connect and not only have incredible music, but all the activations, the film festival, the ideas track, big gear show going on across the street, all these things coming together. It's a palpable energy here.
After Conor, things are really starting to click as I stumble upon the guy who should be the final interview in this podcast. I'm talking about the man who kicked this podcast off, a man who once sold a company for $150 million, and someone I really respect. Here is round 2 with Outside CEO Robin Thurston.
Robin, we talked on Friday. You had no idea how this event was going to turn out. Either did I. I knew the infrastructure was amazing, but we look at it on Sunday night, an hour or two before it's going to end. And what do you think? If you're going to give yourself a grade on an A to F level, what do you grade and why?
I mean, based on all the feedback and the attendance, this is an A+. This is a total home run for us.
I mean, I'm not going to give it an A+. I give it an A-. But at the same time, I think it's so incredible that you're able to do an A-, in my opinion, event in your first year. And, it's Conor, it's CJ. And throughout the weekend, what has been the highlight for you? And has there been any lowlights? I doubt there have been.
No, I think the talks have been amazing. I just came from Jimmy Chin and Conrad and Malik. Obviously having Shaun here and so many amazing speakers like Rebecca Rush and everybody, just an amazing lineup of speakers. The films were incredible. I think about all of these things together. Is there a low point for me? No, we got the message across, which is the outdoors is amazing.
You guys nailed it. I'm so excited about what you guys put together. But then it also makes me think about you bought this whole brand and media company, and then you started stacking companies on top of it for a long time, right? That's what you're doing, and you've created this infrastructure. You've got rid of a lot of the magazine business, which is just part of the new media, and you put out maybe 2 issues of all the brands that you create of print magazines, which is whatever it is. At this point, is Outside a media company? Is it an event company? Is it a print company? What are you guys these days?
Well, to be clear, one is that many of the brands and their legacies are media-based, right? But when you're thinking about how do you inspire people, how do you activate them to actually go do those things you're inspiring, and then ultimately how do you celebrate that? We're far more than a media company. We're a platform. We're a place where people can learn, experience, and celebrate the outdoors. So it's a lot more than a media company.
Once I get done with Robin, I hear the Fleet Foxes getting ready to take the stage, and I finally see CJ, Chris Jerard, and for the first time, I have a minute to talk to him and get his take on the event. I talked to Conor earlier, and it sounds like this whole event is like a brainchild between you and Conor. That kind of, did it start at a bar or something? How does this whole event come to play?
Well, lots of people involved, Mike. Conor Hall from OREC, incredibly influential in terms of how the initial ideas. The idea's been around. I mean, when I first actually met Robin Thurston, who's the CEO of Outside, one of the things he said to me as this was in my former company, Rome and Inkwell, which we've talked about on your podcast previously, before I was part of Outside, Robin was telling me all the things that he kind of wanted to do with this, the roll up and how to change the outdoor business and so on. And one of the things he said was, I think there's an opportunity to do like a South by Southwest of the outdoors. I latched on to that, like to hear him say that, because I've always thought that I'm a big, I think
you love events.
I love events.
You get the big RV.
Right.
You got girls when it was cool to do that, and all kinds of different stuff. And you love that kind of activation.
You can listen to the previous podcast about that. You and I spent time at SIA, we were at OR, when those things were places you had to go. And for me, coming up through that was like super important, right?
Do you want to see this band?
This Fleet Foxes. Yeah, I do want to see
Let's
them.
go see this band. I could have taken up a lot more of Chris's time and asked a bunch of questions, but he's the event organizer, and I'm guessing that he wanted to see his headliner. As for me, while the musical acts weren't my favorite, that's me, and maybe I have shitty taste in music. But you know what? I spent 27 hours at Outside Festival over 3 days, and I honestly can say that I wasn't bored at all. There were so many people to talk to, there was so much to see, to do, to hear, to experience. The prices weren't crazy, and this event is only going to get bigger and better over the years. I mean, if they had the right musical acts this year, this would be the biggest event in the city of Denver in a long, long time. Actually, it was the biggest event in the city of Denver in a long, long time, but it would be even better with a crazier musical lineup, and I'm sure that's going to happen next year. So get your tickets now, and if you're a brand in the industry, please get involved, as this event is really one of those that is special. Thank you, Robin. Thank you, CJ. Thank you, Conor. Thank you, all of the Outside staff. You exceeded my expectations, and that's a hard thing to do. I can't wait to come back next year, but at this point, it's time for me to go home. I've got 48 hours in Seattle, and then I'm off to see the Dead at the Sphere for 2 nights. So that's the podcast. At this point, I want to ask you to rate or review me wherever you listen. Let me know if you like this style of show or not by emailing me at mike@thepowellmovement.com. And please, please, please support the amazing brands that make this show happen. They are Liquid Force, Stanley, Elon Skis, Peter Glenn Ski and Sports, Outdoor Research, and Best Day Brewing. Have a great week, everyone.